There are moments in history that are like lightning strikes. Moments where the air changes, where you can almost feel the shift in your chest. The death of Charlie Kirk was one of those moments. It didn't just send shockwaves through politics, it rippled through the very soul of a nation. For years, Charlie stood firm, speaking truths that many were too afraid to say out loud. He wasn't perfect, no man is, but his heart beat for what was good and right. Charlie wasn't just a conservative voice, he was a man who believed in people. He believed in free speech, in faith, in the idea that you could love your country without being called a villain. And for that, he was hated by the radical left. Day after day, they called him names. They twisted his words. They painted him as some monster, while he kept reaching out his hand, saying, "Let's debate. Let's talk." But the radicals didn't want to talk. They wanted to silence. And when the rhetoric turned fiery, when lies became weapons, a storm began to brew. The hatred of the far left didn't just burn against Charlie, it spread across the land like wildfire. Ironically, it was their very anger and intolerance that drove many people away. The moderates, the centrists, even those on the soft left, they began to see clearly. They began to ask questions. People who once sat quietly in the middle suddenly saw the truth. They saw who was willing to discuss ideas and who was ready to destroy anyone who dared disagree. They crossed the line, not out of political ambition, but out of sheer exhaustion with the lies. Many of them joined the conservative side, not because they suddenly became political, but because they saw a better way, a calmer way, a way built on reason instead of rage. Something even deeper began to happen, something the media never understood. People started to look beyond politics altogether. Lukewarm Christians, people who had only half believed or half cared about faith, began to wake up. And not just them, even non-Christians, people who had been skeptical of God, started to feel a stirring in their hearts. They saw the hatred and darkness spewing from the radical left, and they realized it wasn't just about politics anymore. This wasn't just left versus right. This was good versus evil. Charlie had always said it, but now people could see it with their own eyes. The violence, the intolerance, the burning cities, the silencing of free thought, it wasn't just political disagreement. It was a spiritual war. Evil was revealing its face, and the only answer was light. And as the darkness grew louder, a revival began to rise. Churches started to fill again. Prayer groups sprang up. People began to repent, to turn to Christ, to seek something solid and true in a world that felt like it was falling apart. Charlie's death became a spark. Not because he had been hate-filled. Far from it. Charlie died because he dared to love truth. He died because he believed in freedom, in people's right to speak and believe openly, even when he disagreed with them. His love for others was misunderstood as hatred by those who could not see beyond their own anger. Meanwhile, the same crowd that accused Charlie of intolerance showed their true colors. They rioted. They screamed. They silenced anyone who wouldn't kneel to their ideology. They were willing to destroy livelihoods and lives, all while claiming to fight for justice. But in the end, their violence exposed them. The world began to see the radical left for what it truly was, not a movement for peace, but a machine of rage. In contrast, conservatives stood ready to debate, to discuss, to meet in the public square with reason and words, not fists and flames. This difference became too obvious to ignore. Even those who didn't agree with every conservative idea started to see where the true danger lay. Charlie's death was tragic, but it was not in vain. His life became a seed planted deep in the soil of a weary nation. And from that seed, something began to grow, not just a political movement, but a spiritual awakening. People understood at last that the fight wasn't simply about who sat in Congress or the White House. It was about something eternal. Good will prevail. In the end, that is what Charlie believed with all his heart. Even in the face of lies, even in the face of hatred, he never gave up on truth. And now, in the wake of his passing, more and more people are taking up his torch. The battle isn't over, but the lines are clear. This is no longer a cold war of ideas, it is a blazing battle between light and darkness. And the light is rising. Charlie's voice may be silent now, but his message lives on. And as long as there are people willing to stand for what is right, to love even when hated, to speak even when silenced, evil will never win. Because good, true, eternal good, always prevails.